Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo.
Good morning,
Rufai.
Morning, Femi.
I'm watching in black.
I know we are, look at us, all on the same page. All right, so let me tell you what's happening around the world. Now, after more than 1,000 days of war, US President Donald Trump has called Vladimir Putin to arrange a meeting between the Russian and Ukrainian presidents, a move Volodymyr Zelensky says he is ready for. Now, that was one of the biggest developments from the highly anticipated meeting at the White House between the US president, the Ukrainian president, and a host of European leaders. As expected, Trump and Zelensky did meet first, and in addition to the proposed meeting with Putin, the pair also discussed security guarantees for Ukraine, especially since focus has shifted away from a ceasefire and instead on an all-out peace deal. Let's take a listen.
If you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that. But if you look at the 6 deals that we made peace and you know, long-term, long-running wars, I didn't do any ceasefires.
Now, the specific details aren't clear yet, but immediately we can see that this meeting between Trump and Zelensky was far friendlier than the fiery meeting they had back in February. Now, the pair even joked with a reporter over Zelensky's attire, slightly smarter than his previous choice. Now, Zelensky brought a letter from his wife, Olena Zelenska, to the US First Lady Melania Trump. Now, the meeting was also different due to the visible support for Ukraine from the so-called coalition of the willing, which included leaders from the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Finland, Italy, the European Commission, and NATO. Now, ahead of their private summit, all of them sat around the table with Trump, which gave off the illusion of mutual respect, everybody sitting together, which was noticeably different seating, a different seating dynamic from when the leaders of 5 African countries met with Trump, which was them sat directly in front of Trump. The dynamics were slightly off. Though, to be fair, while in the Oval Office, the European leaders were also sat in front of Trump again. It's open to interpretation and argument. Now, speaking of seating arrangements, there was a hot mic moment actually between French President Emmanuel Macron and Trump. Now, Trump is whispering, so you have to really turn your listening ears on. And there's a lot of noise in the background. But let's see if you can make out what Trump told Macron. Let's take a listen.
I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds. Just sit down. Sit down, everybody.
Okay.
I think we'll let...
I think he wants to make a deal, as crazy as it sounds. That is what Trump told Emmanuel Macron about Vladimir Putin. So perhaps there is peace on the horizon. Now, we'll have to see, isn't it? Well, looking ahead to the future, negotiations have already started regarding these security guarantees for Ukraine. Now, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says teams are arriving today, Tuesday, to start this work that will reassure people in Ukraine, Europe, and the United Kingdom about what the future will look like, hopefully a peaceful one between Russia and Ukraine. Now, from one conflict to the other, let's head home to the African continent where M23 rebels, the main rebel group in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, has suspended peace talks with the Congolese government until it says the government sticks to an already existing ceasefire deal. Now, a reminder that the fighting between the M23 rebels and Congo and the Congolese military has been escalated since January when rebels captured the eastern regional and mineral-rich capital of Goma and surrounding parts. Now, Qatar has been a mediating force. Both sides did sign a ceasefire deal in Doha a few months ago and also last month. But now, just as negotiations are set to actually continue this week, yesterday, starting on Monday, there's this issue with the M23 rebels saying that their representatives were not present, they weren't invited, they're not going to be there. And they insist that the Congolese government does not actually want peace and has accused the government forces of attacking rebel positions. It is important to note that Congo, the United Nations, and many countries around the world have accused Rwanda of backing these M23 rebels, a claim and allegations that Rwanda has repeatedly denied. So these are your stories on the World Brief this morning. Love to hear your thoughts before we move on to the papers.
Femi, see, the truth is, I don't just talk. I talk with facts, precedents, and history. Okay. So, is this Rebel 23 and Congo not part of the 6 wars that Trump claimed he had stopped? That he used to nominate himself for Nobel Prize? When they had this, didn't I tell you that that deal was shaky?
Yes, the minerals deal. Yes.
Have I not been proven right today? Because the real actors in this were not carried along. So M23, the flood of Congo, is now saying, no, we're not on the same page with, with the Congolese government on this. These are part of the deals Trump claimed, the wars he claimed he has sorted out.
The 6 that he didn't use any ceasefire for.
Let me go to the second one that he wants to add to the list now. That's why all of this he wants to do, speaking from facts again, is to get this before October when Nobel Prize will start to crystallize. All of this is just a Nobel Prize. People say, oh, Rufai, you don't like Trump. I'm not delusional. I'm not stupid. I'm not a stupid human being. I am the most, in fact, I am rabidly circumspect with my own thoughts before I put them out. Nothing happened in the meeting yesterday, Ofemi, with due respect. It was a jamboree. Let me start from the first point. Security guarantees, what? Till today, they've not been able to define the security guarantee. They say Article 5 style. Really? Who is going to mandate it? Can they put boots on the ground when it comes to that point in Ukraine? You think Putin will allow? Is it not the same Russia that signed a memorandum in 1994, the Budapest Memorandum, to prevent any attacks on Ukraine? So why are we deceiving ourselves? Why are we acting? You see, the world has a level of selective amnesia. Why is Trump acting like what's this guy, Ben Wallace, the chief of Minister of Defense in the UK, didn't make overtures to Shoigu and some other Russian officials before the war started? I remember I used to go to the church in England, the Catholic church in Milton Keynes, how we used to pray against the war before the war started. People begged Putin, and they are all talking as if Putin is just going to make peace without collecting land. That's where the sticking point is going to come. Now, Trump is now coming out openly in his last tweet to say they should forget Crimea. Crimea is gone. Really? Ukrainian land? Just because of the port of Sevastopol there? And you think he would agree without collecting anything? Yeah. So we want to see when trilateral talks begin. When Putin makes his demand. You see, a lot of people think we are delusional, we are stupid.
Well,
we'll see now. So Putin will just say, okay, I give you back Donbass. Is it the same Putin that does not believe that Zelensky is a legitimate leader?
Let's see.
All right.
Okay.
So before the trilateral meeting, which Trump is supposed to spearhead, will be a bilateral meeting.
Yes.
He said he'd put a call across to Putin. A location hasn't been decided. A date hasn't yet been picked. But the conclusion is that following the meeting yesterday, and we had said a lot of things would come out for us to even begin to see the direction for not just the United States, Ukraine, but also European leaders. But what came out of that, not very concrete, but at least was that a phone call to Putin was made by Trump. A date and location would be agreed. Following that meeting between the two countries, as Russia and Ukraine, so Putin and Zelensky, Trump would then come in to make it trilateral in terms of the three countries. What has come out now is that Trump is saying he doesn't even want to have a talk around ceasefire, but let's just go straight to a peace deal. Yes. Now, you can understand that because if you look at in recent times, the wars that we've had, the failures of ceasefires, especially when one party does not adhere to the terms of the ceasefire, you would understand why there will be questions around do ceasefire deals really work, especially if parties do not adhere, and what are the consequences if they don't. It's the same thing that's happening between M23 and Congo right now. Right. The reason why they're saying they're not going to sign a peace deal, M23, is that they haven't, DR Congo hasn't adhered to the ceasefire deal in the first place, and so they will not go ahead to sign a peace deal. This same thing might happen in Russia and Ukraine. The same thing happened with Israel and Palestine, where ceasefire, even by the third, I think they had a third step ceasefire deal, and by the first, hoping to lead to a peace deal, by the first one, it had fallen apart.
Scattered.
Nothing had happened. So when we look at these and analyze and look at how ceasefire deals have failed, perhaps you can understand Trump's push for a peace deal rather than a ceasefire. But when you do sign, when we get to the peace deal, will they also adhere to the terms of the peace deal? Who holds them to account? Would America be willing to impose heavy sanctions to force the hands of Putin and Russia to ensure that they adhere strictly to the terms of the peace deal? These are some of the things that will be spoken about. Now today, the meeting today, ahead of today, what they will be hoping to speak about, because we've heard about security guarantees, the details are not yet quite played out. But what we do know is that it might come in the area of maybe boots on ground, actually having soldiers. They said they would have 70 billion funded by Europe for American weapons. They've also talked about drones production in Ukraine. So a few details, sketchy details, but today hopefully they'll be able to sit together and discuss to what extent the security guarantees would look like. But Trump has agreed to that. So that's some positives, I would say, for Ukraine. But everything hedges on the outcome of that meeting between Putin and Zelensky. So far, they've not been able to agree. I'm very skeptical as to how successful that meeting would be. But then we would determine, the outcome of the war, or where the direction of this war at the end of the day. But one last thing is also that Zelensky, when on the lighter side, he dressed more formally.
Yes.
Remember, he was criticized at the last meeting in February. That was that made headlines saying that he didn't even receive. This guy the vice president wasn't there.
Yes,
maybe that's why
he was there. He was just quiet.
They told him to just sit and watch.
But it's not fair for the journalists to bring that up and say you're dressed better. I think that was condescending.
No. I think it was on a lighter note. No. It was on a lighter note because of what happened and yes.
Okay, if he apologized, good.
But it says a lot about diplomacy, that even down to your outfit, it speaks a lot when you're going to have conversations. So whether or not they spoke about that, he dressed more respectfully. But he was treated
wore
better.
That same attire to Europe, and they never complained about it.
Well, Europe and Trump are different. Trump is more interested in your outfit.
Now, it's good that the parties involved are talking. Dialogue, negotiation, these form the fulcrum of diplomatic relations among nations. And to have parties interested in peace between Ukraine and Russia coming together, that in itself is a plus in terms of the continuing search for peace between both countries. The second thing is that, Zelensky got a better reception this time.
Yes.
He was dressier, and the same reporter that spoke condescendingly to him the other time told him, "You look fabulous." He was handed out of the White House in February. That did not happen this time around. He was warmly received. And J.D. Vance, who was heckling him in February, kept quiet this time around and allowed the conversations to flow. What are the main outcomes? One, we have the European leaders present at that meeting presenting a common front, namely their support for Ukraine. President Trump also said, he will go along with the European countries and support them in providing a backstop for whatever peace agreement is established in the course of these negotiations. Yes. And the European leaders there were, excited about that, and they praised Trump for, his leadership in terms of diplomacy. Another issue that was discussed was, what would this security guarantee look like? And it was resolved that will be, the details in that respect will be worked out in other meetings. 3, it came up that, Putin is the main issue here because Putin is holding the whole of Crimea and he still holds substantial part of about 4 divisions, 4 areas in Ukraine. Yes. Zelensky has already said that he has no powers to cede any territory. It's on the basis of this that Macron said, look, to even make progress, there are so many issues still to be resolved. To make progress, we will need to have a trilateral meeting, also in the presence of European leaders. So after that meeting, after all of this, President Trump phoned Putin. Yes. So what we should be looking forward to is this Putin-Zelensky summit, where you have the other interested parties, the allies, so to speak, the US and the allies in Europe, to work out the details. However, the unfortunate point is, as I have said previously, that Putin doesn't want to shift, Zelensky doesn't want to shift. And that is why I agree with those, Marco Rubio in particular, who says that peace is still a long way off. As for Democratic Republic of Congo and the M23, now last month, in June, there was this meeting in the White House, President Trump bringing the parties together and securing commitment that there will be peace. It was on that occasion that he saw that beautiful reporter.
Yes.
And he said, oh, you look very beautiful, inside and out, you know, which was on the side. But the main substance was that, you know, he said he was glad that progress would be made.
Yes.
Last month, the M23 and the Democratic government of the DRC met in Qatar. And it was in Qatar that an agreement, the details of a ceasefire, you know, were worked out. Now, that ceasefire agreement was to be signed again on Monday in Qatar. But the M23 spokesperson said they will not be there because they believe that the DRC government is not interested in peace. And what is the bone of contention here? The M23 is claiming that the government in DRC is attacking their locations. And the military, the DRC military denies this and says, no, they are the aggressors.
Yes.
So you see that this conflict is still a long way from being resolved.
Yes.
But this is not the first time. Every other peace attempt in the past has failed in that region.
It has.
And what is the issue? Territory, mineral resources, and then the role of Rwanda, which Rwanda says it denies.
Exactly.
These are the big issues.
They are. Thank you all for your wonderful submissions. I really want to hear your thoughts on a few of these stories on the newspaper review today. So let's take a look firstly at the front page of This Day. This Day leads with President Tinubu joining world leaders in Tokyo in his bid to woo investors and shape Africa's future. Now, upon his arrival, the president was received by Ambassador Hideo Matsubara, who is the ambassador in charge of Haneda Airport for TICAD, and Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, as well as officials from the Nigerian embassy. Now, This Day also wades into the battle against insecurity as it reports 6 suspected Boko Haram members, including a young man believed to be Muslim Mohammed Yusuf, the son of Boko Haram's late founder Mohammed Yusuf, have been arrested. The New Telegraph leads with Amnesty International and Transparency International expressing concern over the gifting of official vehicles and the building of houses for judicial officers by the executive, saying the development is capable of compromising judicial independence in Nigeria. That's why those bodies in Nigeria have called on the judiciary to reject such offers in order to avoid becoming compromised. Meanwhile, The Punch leads with the Revenue, Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, which has hinted at plans to review the salaries of political office holders in Nigeria, describing the current earnings as inadequate, unrealistic and outdated in the face of rising responsibilities and economic challenges. So the RMAFC chairman, Mohammed Shehu, disclosed that President Tinubu presently earns 1.5 million naira every month, while ministers receive less than 1 million naira. These figures have remained unchanged since 2008. Now, the Daily Sun leads with paternity scams rising nationwide. 1 in 4 children are likely to fail a paternity test, according to the 2025 annual data testing report released by Smart Data Nigeria, which analyzed data collected from July 2024 to June 2025. And it found that the national paternity exclusion rate currently stands at 25%. It's worth noting, though, that this is slightly down from the 27% which was recorded in 2024. The data confirms, though, still a troubling and persistent trend in which many presumed fathers turn out not to be biologically related to their children. Now, often these paternity tests are taken during visa application processes, which brings me to the Daily Independent. Now, its headline is talking about visa applications just in a slightly different context. Now, Nigerians are going to have to provide 5 years' worth of their social media activity, specifically their usernames and handles when applying for US visas in the future. And finally, the Daily Trust has a Sokoto boat mishap where at least 3 members of a family are among the 23 people who are missing.
Very sad one out of Sokoto there.
Very, very sad.
And Nigeria is reacting, and reciprocal measures will be meted out in America also as regards the social media.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
Although I would have loved to comment on this
DNA.
TNA
I
matter.
knew that you were going to-
25% of...
Yes, which is lower than last year. Last year, if you
Last
was
year was
27,
27.
So we have
27.
unfaithful people.
Look at
Yes,
that.
I think.
a difference of 2%. Who should we blame? The women.
No, the men.
We don't know.
Anyway.